Hey everyone, welcome to our Hope for Our Times program today. Listen, it's going to be great. We are on location in Florida. I am with my guest, Bill Salus, and we're going to be connecting the dots on what's been going on currently, right now, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, what's going on with Israel. We're going to get into the rapture and the gap theory, and we're going to talk about the first 5 seals from the book of Revelation. So we got a lot to cover today, and I know the studio looks a little bit different because we're not in studio. But Bill, are you ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll, Tom. It's great to be on your show again.
It's great to have you here. It's been a great conference.
It's been wonderful, absolutely.
It has been. You've spoken twice
I just finished my second one, and I'm finished now for the weekend.
Oh, great. And then I just finished mine too.
Yeah.
So I want to roll with some of the things that you shared.
Okay.
Let's start with, okay, it's been about 5 months now since October 7
Right.
with what's going on with Hamas. Let's do an update. I want to update everybody because some challenging things are definitely disturbing things coming out of Iran right now too. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's start with Hamas.
Yeah, well, Hamas, they're saying the death toll now since Israel's gone into the Gaza is up to 30,000. And of course, they've got to get into Rafah, where they're going to, at the very end of Gaza, the south of it. And that's a big deal, but they've been sort of stalling as we sit here. It hasn't happened yet. A lot of international pressure from Biden, et cetera. That may be swaying their decision at this point, but they got to get in there. Thus far, they've been able to dictate the terms of how they want to win this war and fight this war. But I think pretty soon that may change, because I think Iran is going to start taking it into phase 2. I call it phase 2. Phase 1 would be, of course, the Hamas massacre. The Houthis being involved, trying to shut off commerce around the Red Sea. Shiite militias in Iraq kind of aggravating military American bases. They actually even supposedly tried to attack the Israel oil rig out there in the Mediterranean Sea. That report's not credible, but they even tried that. But I think phase 2, because Hezbollah has only been pinpricking, kind of skirmishing with Israel. They haven't pulled their full firepower out yet that they can. They've hit some sites. They've caused evacuation of about 80,000 Jews into hotels and stuff. I think Iran is allowing that to happen because a couple reasons. One is it gives more time for Iran to get their nuclear arsenal. Some think they may have 3 to 5 explosive-ready nuclear weapons already. It also puts a drain on Israel's economy because they've got to take care of these people. It takes out all the civilians who could be combatants if there's a ground war with Hezbollah coming in. So there's multiple reasons that could be going on at this point in time. It's also depleting Israel's Iron Dome system. So I think it's part of a strategy that Iran may have been putting together. But at this point, they just recently came out, an IRCG commander came out and leaked through the Arab News that Iran has given Hezbollah the green light to attack Israel because they believe Israel is going to, after they go into Rafah, they're going to turn their attention to the north and go full speed into Hezbollah and try to, take out the problem with Hezbollah, especially to the south. However, recently, Israel has even bombed Baalbek, which is north of Beirut, to the east. So they've hit deep into Lebanon as well. And Baalbek is an example. That was just recently. So Iran is realizing that at this point in time, they can't hold back anymore. They've got to get their proxies involved. Hezbollah, I think that's going to then lead to Syria being involved. They got chemical weapons. And I think we're going to see prophecies, Tom, maybe the destruction of Damascus in Isaiah 17.
Well, I'd like to ask you about that, but I'm going to go here. This is going to be a rabbit trail for just a second. But you mentioned Baalbek in Lebanon. Quite interesting, because when Hadrian came into Jerusalem and put the Temple of Zeus on the Temple Mount, he also put one in Baalbek in Lebanon. And the one in Lebanon, there's still enough of the archaeology finds that are still there to be able to show what Hadrian was up to, what he did to the Temple Mount. As you know.
Fascinating, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was also something else interesting. I know you know this, but many of our viewers don't. It's not real well known. When Hadrian came in, he wanted to destroy and eliminate the thought of the Jews. So what's he do? He puts the temple of Jupiter or / Zeus on top of the Temple Mount where the temple was, which is another confirmation that the temple was on the Temple Mount. Why would Hadrian put it up there? Because he wanted to eliminate the thought of the Jews. And he also put this, check this out, the temple of the goddess Diana in the area where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is, which many believe that's where the place was of the crucifixion and also the tomb of Jesus. So it's fascinating. Hadrian did those things because that's what they would do. He's a Roman. He wants to say, you're not going to worship, I'm not going to allow the Jews to worship. And all the first Jews were the first Christians. So Holy Sepulchre, Temple Diana, Temple Mount, Jupiter, but now Israel takes us out at Baalbek, Lebanon.
And one more thing he did in the attempt to eliminate the thought of the Jews was he asked his counselors, who is Israel's greatest enemy throughout time? So he renamed at that point in time, he's got Aeolia Palestinia, I think it was, meaning
Aliana Capitolatina was Jerusalem, and Syria Palestina, I believe, was in English Palestine.
Yeah, because of the Philistines.
Yes.
In their language, that was called, Palestinia. So Palestine is what we got today. That all happened back in 135. It was really never became a nation, and the borders of that territory were always loosely defined depending on whoever controlled the area. But all of a sudden now, since 1948, the so-called Palestinians are going, that is our land. Well, really, it is not your land.
Oh, it's definitely not. In fact, it was the time of the Soviet Union. It was really a KGB thing that got Yasser Arafat to say, hey, we're Palestinians, but that's another story. But let me get back here. I told you we go on a rabbit trail. But it's fascinating when you look at these things, and you mentioned this in Lebanon, where that temple to Jupiter was built by Hadrian. All right, so with Hezbollah, Iran taking it to round 2, very interesting. From what I have read for the last few months, it seemed that Iran had a bigger plan. Hamas got involved earlier than what Iran wanted. They kind of jumped the gun. There's the big party out there. So Hamas did what Hamas did, jumping the gun with Iran's leadership. But Iran's in this, and they're going for it. I mean, the world is definitely turning against Israel at the same time. But what do you see as coming? What do you guess?
Clearly, Israel's in a war mode right now, and basically at this point in time, they want to create a peaceful condition for their citizens, and they can't do that with Hamas, Hezbollah, and their enemies around them, Iran's proxies, etc. One of the reasons I think we need to watch on the Hezbollah front soon is because if they don't come at Israel on a larger level, Iran's going to lose a proxy. They're going to lose Hamas clearly soon with the Rafah attack. So I think they might come in and try to interrupt that, not just disturb it, but actually interrupt it majorly with another conflict on the northern border. And that's why they're getting a green light to attack. I mean, that's a big deal that they're saying you can go ahead and attack now. Immediately when that was issued, that report, Hassan Nasrallah had an important security meeting with his people. So who knows what they talked about at that meeting. But what I see is coming is that Israel's in a war mode. The genie's out of the bottle in the Middle East. Pandora's box is open. The lid's not coming back on. There's not going to be a political solution to this. The world's clamoring for a two-state solution. Biden's right at the front of that list, and the Arabs, Saudi Arabia is going, hey, give us a two-state solution, we'll normalize relationships with you. But there's all these preconditions. The Arab Peace Initiative, it just can't happen. One, give East Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state. Now they've added a new one. The settlers in the West Bank, kind of get a lot of them out. That ain't going to happen, right? Also, the right of return so that the Palestinians can go back into all of Israel, and the land for peace thing as well. So, but basically, and what Israel will get for that is the Arab countries and the Islamic countries will befriend Israel and normalize relationships as if Saudi Arabia can control the hatred that's deeply embedded in those 1.8 billion Muslims. That can't happen. And meanwhile, Israel's going, we're not for it, we can't do it. It's the last thing on our mind. We need to get rid of our enemies around us. And so we're coming to this stalemate, and prophecies talk about a war, not a peace deal. Respect to the Arab-Israeli conflict. I know the peace deal of Daniel 9:27, but I don't see that with this. I see this ending through a military conflict. And the Israeli Defense Forces, we put in our DVD, the prophetic documentaries, the pre-tribulation prophecies, we put a military solution to the Israeli Defense Forces existing in fulfillment of Bible prophecy in numerous places.
So you already answered my next question. Is going to be, where do you see Saudi Arabia right now? And you answered that. What do you think is going to be the shift to get the attention from Gaza to Jerusalem? Because we know from Zechariah chapter 12, Jerusalem is going to become this focal point, Jerusalem itself. I can see it coming. I have my own thoughts, but you tend to go a little bit further, and I want to hear what you have to say.
I just talked about that in my second message here. Jerusalem, a cup of trembling and a burdensome stone to the nations. A cup of trembling to the surrounding peoples, Zechariah 12:2.
So you see it in two things, the surrounding people and then to the nations?
Yeah, actually I see it all as one event. Most everybody tries to put that with Armageddon, and I give multiple reasons why I just don't see that as the case. But I think it leads to a point where there's a final siege on Judah and Jerusalem by the surrounding peoples, those enemies around Israel. They're actually in Psalm 83. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. Of course, you got the Hamas, you got the Palestinians, the Hezbollah, etc. Iraq would be part of that as well, Shiite militias in Iraq. And I think what's going to happen is this is going to get so bad, this war, that Israel is going to find itself in a prison rules fight, and it's going to take out the city of Damascus. We're told in Isaiah 7:19 that the desolation that causes the destruction of Damascus is caused by the children of Israel. And Isaiah 17:14 says, "One night you see him, Damascus, in the masculine pronoun, but in the morning he is no more." This is a portion of those who plunder us and rob us. So in self-defense, Israel takes out the city because they have to. We're told in Isaiah 17 verses 4-6 that the glory of Jacob fades, his flesh waxes lean, and he takes a big hit. He uses an example of an olive tree with a huge shaking. It's only 2 or 3 olives on the uppermost branch, 4 or 5 in the fruitful bough. So if you superimpose that olive tree over Israel, this uppermost branch would be Haifa area up there, which is mainly evacuated at this point, some of those communities in northern Israel. Tel Aviv would be down there with the fruitful bough. An olive tree has a fruited variety. Olive tree can have 500,000 olives on it. Severe shaking, and look what's left, just barely, hardly any olives. Israel gets hit, they get hit hard, I think is what Isaiah is saying. And when that happens, they take out a city, the other Arab states are going to go, wow, they're weak, we can get them now. We don't want them to take out our cities. We don't want Beirut to go. We don't want Amman, Jordan. We don't want Cairo. We don't want Mecca. Well, guess what? Amman, Jordan goes next. Jeremiah 49:2 says there's an alarm of war in Rabbah of the Ammonites, that's Amman, Jordan. It shall be a desolate mound, and Israel shall take possession of its inheritance. So I can see what's going to happen in my estimation is these Arab countries are going to go, we can get Israel now. So they all convene together, and I think this would be the conclusion, climactic conclusion of the Arab-Israeli conflict. I would connect it to Psalm 83. And they're going to come against Jerusalem, they try to seize on Judah and Jerusalem. But God is going to make it a cup of trembling to them. It's going to be intoxicating to them, and they're not going to win. It's going to be an unsuccessful siege, because we're told in Zechariah 12:6 that the Israeli defense forces, the governors of Judah, will be like a fire pan in the woodpile. They'll be like a fiery torch in the woodpile. And the people around them, round about, will be like sheaves, and they shall devour the people on the right hand and the left hand. And you look at a map, that, of course, that's all those countries, the neighbors, the surrounding peoples. Now, one of the reasons this can't be Armageddon is because the Israeli defense forces are involved in defeating the surrounding nations. In an Armageddon, Jesus Christ solely defeats the armies of the Antichrist in the Armageddon in Revelation 19 and Isaiah 63 and elsewhere.
So how soon do you see, when you look at Psalm 83 and you look at these different things tying together, again, we have the tension on Gaza, the tension, there's a shift that will take place. How soon do you see things developing? I mean, I'm not asking for a date, but I look at certain developments that have to happen because of Gaza. Gaza is going to continue to become this tool that the globalists from the West are going to use to press Israel into entering peace and security or whatever is necessary, while at the same time we have other events that are coming about. Mondo talks about the red heifers. We got all these different dynamics that are coming.
Well, you asked me how soon, and of course we don't know. I mean, it'd be difficult to say. I thought this stuff was going to happen last year, and now it's kind of carrying over into this year. So I think certain things are going to happen this year, but they still could drag out a little bit down the road. But what I think is going to happen is it's going to be a massive war with the north, with Hezbollah, involving Syria as well, Iran's proxies. Hezbollah won't necessarily go it alone if they got Syria with its chemical weapons right next door. And I could see that happening in 2024. I mean, I would say probably that could happen in 2024. And therefore, if that happened, then you would probably see a prophecy find fulfillment maybe in 2024, the destruction of Damascus, because Israel will take out that city. They'll have no choice, really.
It is interesting when you read the news. It seems quite often, at least a couple of times a week, Israel does some kind of operation in Damascus. And it's there. It seems to always be in the news. Okay, let's shift from here. Let's launch into a little bit further into the future. The rapture takes place, and then we have the four horsemen of the apocalypse and the fifth seal. So let's develop this, because you and I both have similar ideas on a gap period. I don't believe the rapture is going to happen the next day Antichrist confirms covenant. I don't see it happening that way. I believe the beginning of the 70th week of Daniel is the confirmation of the covenant. That's what kicks it off. But I think everybody would like to hear what your thoughts are, because there's a lot of confusion with the first five seals.
And most of our colleagues would say the tribulation starts with the opening of the first seal. The white horseman is the Antichrist. He's on the scene now. Israel's on the scene. He can confirm a covenant, Daniel 9:27. Israel and the many. Of course, we don't know who the many is until you go to Isaiah 28, verse 15. The signatory says they made an agreement with death and Sheol. Now, who are they? We've got to put a face on them. And then it talks about they're worried about an overflowing scourge. So we've got to say, well, what is death and Sheol, whoever they are, perpetrating that Israel is concerned about? So these things have to be in play before Israel even come to the bargaining table to have sign a deal. But when I look at the first seal, Tom, the white horseman, he says he's given a bow. He comes out conquering and to conquer. But I go through all the words, and in the Greek, the word for covenant, diatheke, is not in there. In other words, we're not really told this is where the covenant gets signed. Yes, he's on the scene. He could confirm it. Israel's on the scene. They could sign it. But who's the other signatory? Who's death and Sheol? Well, it's odd. If you think about it, the second and third horseman, the fourth horseman rolling out sequentially is death and Hades. Who are they and what do they represent? Hades is the Greek word for Sheol, the Hebrew word. And I think basically that's the other signatory. And they have authority over the court of the earth to kill through multiple means. Now, a lot of our colleagues would say, well, they're killing the court of the earth. And they could be, but it's not really what it says. They have authority or power over the court of the earth to kill. Okay,
let me ask you this. So you said the part of the signatories are death and Hades, or death and Sheol. Isaiah 28, Revelation chapter 6. So it's actually a description of individuals.
I think the global religion is probably death and Hades, because you've got death is dealing with mortality, Hades is dealing with immortality. In other words, it's a spiritual situation.
Dynamic.
And in other words, when someone dies, if you're a believer now, you go to heaven. If you're an unbeliever, you go to Hades, you go to hell. And they're about deception. They're a counterfeit gospel. And they have authority and power over the court of the earth to accomplish their counterfeit scenario. And we find out, and so I think the second signatory comes on the scene as the fourth horseman. And Israel don't want to be part of that scourge of all the people they're killing. And among who they're killing is Christians who received God, give their life for faith for Jesus Christ after the rapture of the fifth seal saints. And they ask God, under the altar, and they ask God, how long, O Lord, until you avenge our blood on those who perpetrated that death in Hades? In other words, why are they asking that question, Tom? You and I have stumbled with this back and forth. Wouldn't they know this is a time of all-time prophetic high of awareness? The rapture's happened. Probably seen Ezekiel 38, the destruction of Damascus, Isaiah 17. There's 144,000 witnesses, probably talking about prophecy, saying, hey, listen, we were written about in Revelation chapter 7. I mean, these people are not stupid. They give their life for Jesus Christ when it's a time when it's going to cost them their life, and it's not a popular choice, because there's going to be strong deception and delusion perpetrated by lying signs and wonders immediately after the rapture, as per 2 Thessalonians 2. So they're making an intelligent choice to follow Jesus Christ and realizing they're probably going to be martyred, and indeed they are. They're martyred by the death in Hades, the fourth horseman. So why are they asking that question? And the interesting answer God gives them is, you must rest a little while longer until your fellow servants and their brethren are killed like you. In other words, 3 different periods of Christian martyrdom after the rapture: the fifth seal saints, fellow servants of the fifth seal saints, and the brethren of the fellow servants of the fifth seal saints. And I believe those happen. The fifth seal die in the gap. They don't know how much longer. I believe their fellow servants die in the first half of the tribulation, killed by the harlot who's drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. And then she's desolated at the mid part of the tribulation by the 10 kings, Revelation 17:16. And then the Antichrist takes full throttle over the world, and he's beheading Christians who don't take the mark of the beast. So I think at this point in time, all the way to the fifth seal, I'm doubting that the tribulation has started. Now the sixth seal, the wrath of the Lamb has come, and the tribulation has to be started by the sixth seal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I also look at it when I look at when you have the opening up of the seals. It is Jesus who opens the seals in Revelation chapter 5. So this question was posed to me by some of our pre-wrath friends that, well, when does the wrath of the Lamb begin? I really believe it begins with Jesus when he opens the seals. However, there is a different form of what's happening with the seals than when you get to the sixth seal. But it's all, I categorize it as all the wrath of the Lord. Because it has to be with the opening of the seals if it's Jesus who's the only one who's worthy to open them. And it's at that point when there are these judgments that take place on the earth. But I believe those judgments, they are from God, but through the hands of men. Mm-hmm. The conquering of the white horse, the red horse with the war, the black horse, the famine, economic collapse, and obviously the pale horse too, all at the hand of men. But it still is the Lord who is behind it in the way that I described it with one of our friends recently, in the way that at the time of Pharaoh, it was God still orchestrating them, yet Pharaoh also brought some of the things upon himself. Mm-hmm. And we see these types of things. Revelation chapter 17, we have the 10 kings who come to power. They've orchestrated everything for their global system. They give their power and authority to the beast. A few verses later, though, says God is the one who put it in the hearts of the 10 kings to do what they do, mm-hmm. to fulfill his prophetic purposes. So in that, we still see the hand of the Lord. We see the wrath of the Lamb in the sixth seal, but it's still the Lord that is the one that's calling the shots with mm-hmm. all of the seals before that. I believe we are raptured like you before mm-hmm. the seals. I believe we are the redeemed who are in Revelation chapter 5, who witness the Lord loose the scrolls.
Right.
And so as we see these things developing, there's so many different dynamics going on there, but when does the confirmation of the covenant begin? And I think that's where you and I go, well, wait a minute, the rapture takes place, these seals are still coming, they still are of the Lord, but the actual 7-year tribulation period doesn't necessarily begin right away.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll use a baseball analogy for me, and the reason I've come to the possible conclusion, and I'm not dogmatic about it, of course we can't be on the situation, as to why I don't think the first seal starts the tribulation. Strike one is, the first seal says nowhere about, doesn't give us any definition that the diatheke, the Greek word, the covenant, doesn't talk about the covenant at all. He's coming out on his career, he's going to conquer and conquering. He's become a political leader, he will broker a treaty with Israel. He's become a military leader, he's fighting wars in Daniel 11. He's going to become a supreme religious leader in Revelation 13. He wants the whole world to worship him. So he comes out, he's going to embark upon his threefold career. But when he initially comes out, he's playing some second fiddle to the world religion. Because we find out in Revelation 17, ecumenical Babylon, the harlot is sitting on the beast, Revelation 17:3, I think. The beast is carrying her to her heights, Revelation 17:7. So after she overextends her usefulness, the 10 kings desolate her, and then he becomes the king of the hill, ultimately, and the
king of the hill,
the top gun, right? But so basically, strike one for me is there's no mention of the covenant. That it would have been helpful if there was in the first seal. Strike number two for me is I don't think the second signatory is, which I believe would be death in Hades, that's perpetrating the overflowing scourge. I don't think they come on the scene till the fourth seal. And the strike three for me, the reason I lean toward the alternative view on the timing of the seals is because the fifth seal saints are asking a very genuine question. How long, O Lord, until you avenge us for what's taken place? They're concerned that this is going to keep going and more of their loved ones are going to die, whatever the reason they're asking that question. They don't know that the covenant has already been confirmed, because if the covenant had been confirmed already previously, let's say at the first seal, they could calendar the days to where they're at on the timeline. They would know how much longer. They wouldn't need to ask that question.
Okay. One last question. When you look at the fifth seal saints, do you equate them, not them with the 7th chapter of the book of Revelation, with those who are martyred and saved out of the tribulation period?
I think the fifth seal saints, their fellow servants, and their brethren are all kind of grouped together in Revelation 7 verses 9 through 14 or whatever, 17. I think that's all the martyrs in my estimation. So we have the first 8 verses of Revelation 7, the 144,000 witnesses. They're sealed for service. They're from the 12 tribes of Israel. They're Jewish evangelists. They're very effective. And we have a worldwide revival. We're talking about all these people being saved from tribes, tongues, and nations, as Revelation 7 concludes. And John says, well, who are they? And these are the ones who come out of the Great Tribulation. They seem to be those martyrs through those 3 periods of Christian persecution.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Enjoyed the time.
Thanks, Tom.
Looking forward to going for Italian food with you when we get back home.
Let's do it.
All right.